Siena is a beautiful medieval city in Tuscany, Italy. The Republic of Siena existed for over 400 years, from the 12th century to 1555. In the Italian War of 1551 to 1559, Siena was defeated by its rival Florence, which had an alliance with Spain. The new Spanish king owed a lot of money to the Medici family, so he ceded Siena back to the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, to which it belonged until the unification of Italy in the 19th century. Prior to this, in 1348, the Black Death killed 80% of Siena's population. One of Europe's great medieval squares is Piazza del Campo. It was a marketplace established before the 13th century on a sloping site near the meeting point of three hillside communities. It was paved in 1349 in fishbone-patterned red brick with 9 lines of travertine, which divide the piazza into 10 sections. The 9 lines represent the 9 lords who ruled the city in the 13th century. The square is dominated by the 335-foot tall bell tower, the Torre del Mangia, which was built from 1325 to 1348. If you have the time, climb up the 400 steps to get an amazing view of the square. It's part of the Palazzo Pubblico, or Town Hall. Construction began in 1297 to serve as the Republic of Siena's government. It still serves as City Hall, but the first floor houses the City Museum of Siena. The famous Palio horse race is held in the square twice a year, on July 2nd and August 16th. 10 riders ride their horses bareback, and the intense race is only 3 laps or 90 seconds long, but winning the race is an immense source of pride for the victor and the ward they came from. I took these photos over 20 years ago on the day that they drew the horses, so you can imagine what this square looks like on race day. While I didn't get to see it on my last visit to Siena over 20 years ago, the Siena Cathedral, or Duomo di Siena, is a must-see. The cathedral was originally designed and completed between 1215 and 1263 on the site of an earlier structure. Additions to the church were built over the centuries. The west facade was built in 2 stages and combines elements of French Gothic, Tuscan Romanesque, and classical architecture. Work began on the lower part in 1284 and was built using polychrome marble. The work was overseen by Giovanni Pisano, who was influenced by his father Nicola Pisano. The facade is decorated with scrolls, allegorical figures, and biblical scenes. Work on the upper facade was completed sometime between 1360 and 1370. 3 large mosaics on the gables of the facade were made in Venice in 1878. The large central mosaic, the Coronation of the Virgin, is the work of Luigi Mussini. The smaller mosaics on each side, Nativity of Jesus and Presentation of Mary in the Temple, were made by Alessandro Franchi. The bronze central door was commissioned in 1946 and replaced the original wooden one. The scenes on the door represent the glorification of the Virgin, Siena's patron saint. Across from the Siena Cathedral is a building that houses the Siena Tourist Information Office, but most importantly, it also houses the Santa Maria della Scala, one of Europe's oldest hospitals, originally dating from the late 12th century. It became a museum in 1995. Inside the hospital is also the National Archaeological Museum. We didn't have time to see it, but from what I've heard, it's definitely worth a visit if you're in Siena. While your eyes may want to look up and take in all the splendor of this cathedral, you will also want to look down and see the many ornate marble images designed by Renaissance masters from the 1300s to the 1800s. There are almost 60 squares called tarsi, and the designs focus on Greek and Roman culture and include stories of the Old Testament. Many of the designs are covered throughout the year and are only revealed after the Palio race in August and are covered up again in late October. The Duccio Oculus over the apse is one of the earliest examples of Italian stained glass. It was created in 1288 and depicts the Assumption, burial, and coronation of the Virgin Mary. Before we see the rest of this beautifully decorated cathedral, let's take a look at what I consider the highlight of the cathedral, the Piccolomini Library. When you see the library, especially the ceiling, it's one of those wow moments. The Piccolomini Library was commissioned around 1492 by Cardinal Francesco Piccolomini. Cardinal Francesco intended this chapel as a memorial to his uncle, Pope Pius II. Pope Inigo Silvio Piccolomini was one of the great humanist scholars, and the library in Siena was built to house his precious collection of illuminated manuscripts. The 10 frescoes painted by artist Pinturicchio represent scenes from the life of Pope Pius II. The episodes are arranged on 3 of the library's 4 walls and organize Pius II's life into 3 distinct segments: his early years as a humanist, his experiences as a cleric, and then at the apex of his career, his papacy. Pinturicchio painted this cycle of frescoes around the library between 1502 and 1507, representing artist Raphael and himself in several of them. The designs for the frescoes are possibly based on drawings from Raphael, as the two work closely together. Each scene is labeled with a Latin inscription. A 1,000 gold ducats were promised to Pinturicchio for his works, under the condition that he did not undertake any of the work, quote, either wall painting or picture, either in Siena or elsewhere, end quote, and that he should, quote, do all the designs of the stories himself on paper and on the walls, and also that he himself should do the heads of the figures in fresco, end quote. The Cappella del Voto, Chapel of the Madonna of the Vow, also known as the Kicchi Chapel, was commissioned in 1659. This circular chapel with a gilded dome was built by German architect Johann Paul Schor, with designs by Italian master Gian Lorenzo Bernini. 2 of the 4 marble sculptures are by Bernini himself. It features the Madonna del Voto, which is much revered. On the eve of a battle against Florence, the city of Siena dedicated itself to the Madonna, and Siena won against all odds, which they ascribed to her miraculous protection. The painting was done after the victory. This is Piazza Salimbeni, which was renovated in the 19th century and contains 3 palazzos. From left to right, Palazzo Tantucci, Palazzo Salimbeni, which housed one of the oldest banks in the world, and Palazzo Spanocchi, which features busts of Roman emperors.
I'm sure that Bolivia has already mentioned the portraits.
In the middle of the piazza is a statue of Siena priest and economist Salustio Bandini, which was sculpted in 1882.